I think it put off ICT to begin with, the Sam KB episode. He blocked it. That was probably the first conversation I ever had where I left it thinking, I probably need to learn ICT or I need to look into ICT some more. Look, everything's run on algorithms now, even social media. Everything. So you think the financial market in the world wouldn't be run on algorithms?
I was like, nah, that video was like, oh, was it real? Was it scripted?
All I said to him was, I'm going to ask you hard questions.
I'm guessing you don't just lose all your trades on your live streams. Yeah.
Because when he went up to the door and was like, where's the door?
Where's the door? Can you open the door?
I was like, where is the door? Yeah, I said the same. I was like, where is the door? Where's it?
Right, welcome everybody to the new episode of the Fair Value Podcast. Today I'm joined by somebody pretty damn special. You will have seen him somewhere on social media. He's everywhere. You can't go into Instagram or YouTube without seeing this man's face. So I'm joined by none other than Words of Rizdom himself, Iqbal. Welcome, bro. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for inviting me on. Thank you for inviting me on and for the very kind words as well.
Yeah, dude, you're a big inspiration to me, and I think quite a few others in, going into this space. I think it's also worth mentioning that it seems like you're pretty encouraging of people trying to start podcasts, especially even in the space, even though they could potentially be competitors. I mean, you were recently on the Titans of Tomorrow podcast, and I mean, I think that they're pretty directly inspired by, what you do. So what's your thoughts around like people starting podcasts in the trading space? Like, do you think it's going to get overly saturated, or do you think that there's room for lots of different conversations?
I think there's two elements to that. So let's take Titans of Tomorrow, for example. Wakar was speaking to me for a long time. They came on the podcast back in January of this year. And we were speaking back and forth for a long time after that, and he was very supportive consistently, just sending support when we dropped certain episodes, consistently watching the episodes, even though he doesn't have to. And he kept saying he wanted to get involved in somehow, He wasn't saying like he was going to start one or anything, but I said to him, you should start one because he has the right work ethic, drive, vision, and those things are important. And that's what I would then say to others is that not everyone should start one because not everyone has that drive, has that vision. And it does require a certain skill set, and passion, of course, to do podcasting successfully. So I think there is an element where, not that it'll get saturated, because all conversations are powerful, as long as they're being directed in the right way. So not that they'll be saturated, but there's definitely like a lot of trying to copy. And that's not a problem if you do it well. If you do it poorly, it's not a problem. It's just like, that's why copying isn't a good idea. Because it's not your idea or your style and you're just trying to emulate someone who might be doing it successfully, you won't be able to pull it off. If you do pull it off, that's great. That's fantastic because then you're getting the same sort of feel anyway. And that's why the first person who's doing it is doing it in that way in the first place because it makes an impact, right? But you should always try and be unique. Have your own style, So like, again, taking Titans of Tomorrow for another example is like my style is quite just get after it and just go, and, work it out as you go along. While they were very calculated in making sure they had their name, had their brand and everything. And look how it worked. Look at the first episode done incredibly, second episode done incredibly. And that's probably due to that planning. So again, they have their style and they stuck to it. They have what their USP is, what they want, the sort of conversations and guests they want to have, rather than just, oh, Riz did this, let's do this, or so-and-so did that, let's copy that. And that's all I would say is if you do come into podcasting, just make sure you're passionate about it and just make sure you do it in your way, your style. And if you do want to copy someone, because again, there's no problem that I've copied things, not from anyone in our space, just because there wasn't anyone at the time, but I've copied from other podcasters, right? And then brought that into our space. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just make sure you pull it off. Make sure you pay the right attention to detail.
A lot of people ask me, what is my favorite prop firm to use? And the answer is simple. It's Blue Guardian. Blue Guardian has the best prop firm conditions of any prop firm I've used to trade with. And they allow you to take an unlimited amount of time to pass their evaluation. Not only this, but they give you the Guardian Protector, which is a tool that stops you from hitting your max daily loss. You can also set it further down to stop you from over trading for that day. It simply cuts off your MT4 account and you can't continue to trade if you hit more than that loss. If you want to use the prop firm that I use, click the link down below and use the code GARTRADES to get 10% off your purchase. Let's continue with the video.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they say, be a first-rate version of yourself rather than a second-rate version of somebody else.
Yes.
I think as well, you know what, I was speaking to Casper and Casper SMC, and he was saying, freaking amazing guy, I love him. He was saying that, you know, when you came to Miami and all of that, you told him a lot about his story, and he heard a lot about how you started, and you're saying how great your team is and all of that stuff. When was it, you know, and I wanted to ask this again to you, and again, I don't know if everybody watching this is going to be interested in hearing about podcasts, but I don't really care. I want to chat to you and learn from you. This is for me. If everybody else wants to listen to it, cool.
100%.
So he was saying, you know, there was a point in time where you were like, this is going to be a big deal. I'm going to make something big over this. There's a big gap in this industry for it, and you kind of decided to go all in. You know, you started getting more equipment, investing more in creating more content and putting more of your time, which of course in this industry is definitely money. I mean, you could be putting that time into other ventures that will make you, you know, money as well. So what was for you that moment that you decided, hey, I'm going all in on podcasting in the trading space? And what was that kind of switch like for you? Was it scary to kind of go all in and firstly commit to investing so much of your time, and then obviously, you know, investing in equipment and manpower and all of those things?
It's very interesting because I was making content before podcasting, for example, but I was just doing the usual, you know, like 5 mindset tips for trading and top 3 mistakes traders make and stuff like that. Very cliche, very much done. And there's no problem doing those. Again, you have to just make sure you're doing them in your style and how you want to do them, and if you're passionate about that. But I wasn't really passionate about making that sort of content. I was passionate about trying to grow a following and provide value. I was just trying to find my niche, find what worked for me. Then I went on to someone else's podcast and realized you could hire studios and stuff, and that was it. That's when I just completely switched to, I want to do podcasting. More so, kind of similar to what we spoke about, you know, over DMs recently, is like, it's a selfish reason, most of all, because you want to learn from other people. You want to increase your network. You want to have powerful conversation. As a byproduct of that, you end up with, you know, value for others as well, because we record it, etc. And that's how it started. It was just a passion, literally just, I enjoy doing this, I want to do this, and hopefully it will grow. And it's something I wanted to do years ago. And I've told this story before, where years ago, I obviously watched Joe Rogan and saw the power of podcasting just through his podcast, and thought, I could do this, or I think I could do this. Had a different idea of what podcasting was. I didn't think of the skill set of it. I just thought, oh yeah, you just have a good banter and good laugh, and, you know, from the conversation, something good will happen. But it's a lot more than that, of course. But where did the passion, like, where did the all-in element come in? I kind of went all in from that moment anyway, because I kind of just decided I don't want to do any other type of content. This is what I want to do. For me as well, it was like 2 in 1, because when I was doing those old videos, I was having to do like those videos and then separately try and make reels. So I was made like the Library of Rizdom was a series I was doing, where I was literally taking books that I'd read and giving the biggest lessons from them. I actually recorded like 60 episodes of that, only released like 30 of them. And I still have 30 that are unedited and recorded, but we just never released them because, again, we just went all in on the podcast. And another reason for that was for the ease. When you do a podcast, you don't have to do anything else. You just sit down, you record, you have your conversation, and that's it. From there, you get the long form, obviously, the podcast episode, and you get the reels and the short form from the podcast as well. So it's like a much more efficient way of creating content. And then...
Right, and I think... Yeah.
I was just going to say,
Go.
the last thing was when I started to go more all in terms of equipment, in terms of manpower, in terms of expansion, was literally as I started to learn about podcasting, learning how quality makes a massive difference, right? Learning how certain questions can make a difference, certain guests, you know, the preparation, you know. Once I started to learn about these intricacies, and it's very, you know, reflective of trading, once I started to get just deeper understanding, deeper knowledge, and creating strategies, if you will, for the podcast, that is when I started to expand it even further. And as we did start to see that accelerated growth at the start of the year, then we really went all in even more so, because we had to capitalize and make sure we kept that going. It wasn't just a one-off. And thankfully, by doing so and really paying attention to detail, it has led to where we are today so far.
Right. Do you think as well, like when you started to see that success, did you find yourself under more pressure to perform? Because I sometimes feel somehow affected by success. So for me, when I saw success on certain videos of mine, I'm like, hey, this is my chance. Don't fumble what you've been given, you know? And sometimes it can be sort of crippling in a way. Did you feel that at all?
I have a couple of times. And it's very fleeting though, because it would happen off the back of like an episode that wasn't to do with trading, for example. So like when I had my brother-in-law on, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, was like the second episode after Raja's first one. So the first like big episode we ever had. And that did like a few thousand views, for example. I had my mum on for a second time, again, very similar. And then I had a boxer on, and again, very similar. And I understand in one element in terms of it's not to do with trading, so therefore people might not be as bothered. Cool. But then equally, it was kind of just a little bit sort of off-putting, a little bit negative in terms of like, I thought the quality would drive us forward anyway. But for me personally, it goes back to, again, why are you doing this? You're doing this because you enjoy it. And you're doing it because you enjoy the conversations that you want to have, regardless of everyone else. You try, obviously, to make sure there's value in that conversation, regardless of the topic. And my job, knowing that the audience is quite trading-centric, obviously, is that let's try and reflect things, whether I had a boxer, whether I had my mom on, for example, who's been into property or law degree, and lived that path. How can we reflect this? And the lessons can be universal, as they usually are. But regardless, it's just a learning lesson. I just submit to the process of understanding that this is going to happen. It's just like trading. It's like a lot of people assume that once you're successful, you won't have a losing month. You won't have a drawdown period. You won't have a losing streak. As soon as you start to have those beliefs, that's when you lose your profitability. You lose your mental edge, because it will feel a lot more heightened, because you've convinced yourself that now I've got it. Now I've unlocked it. Now I've got, I've hacked the market, if you will. And, those people who, give themselves into that mindset, they have a hard time, versus the people who understand that, okay, I've gotten my edge down and I've gotten disciplined, and now I just need to keep that discipline. And regardless of whether I have a losing streak or a losing month or a bad video in terms of the podcast, for example, it doesn't impact the bigger picture. I have to stay consistent, stay focused on the task, and we will continue on. Because I imagine there's probably episodes I have in the bank right now that haven't come out that will probably perform not as well as some of the others. But that's fine, because again, it's still progress. It's still learning moments, because at the end of the day, our job as podcasters, for example, is to take our episode and say, how can I make get this to the most amount of people? And that's our job as the podcaster and the team who run the podcast, for example, is to say, this episode might have a guest who doesn't have a big following, right? That's no problem. But how can we make it get to a large amount of people, whether it's the trailer, the thumbnail, the title, whether it's some of the reels and shorts, whether it's the questions, because we've had people like Eunice, for example. Eunice had, I think, 2,000 followers on Instagram, wasn't very known in the industry, except amongst his community. But then that episode's done, I think 80,000 views so far, and, he's gone on other podcasts. He's been invited to speak at certain events, and that's incredible to see, and, again, it comes down to his value and him being able to answer, obviously, the questions, but then obviously the questions, the trailer, and so on and so forth. Even like NBB Trader, for example, our biggest episode, he had, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2,000 Twitter followers, right, when we did that episode. And now he has over 10,000, is very well respected within the ICT community. And again, it comes down to his value and then how we portray the episode. And so it's a challenge. I welcome that challenge, of how, okay, when we fail to make the views as large as we want, how can we learn from this? It's the same with the losses. Like, how do we learn from this to do better next time?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just, the thing is, it's a lot of people that create content that I've spoken to, and they've all said the same thing. It's all very much comparable to trading, because you have a strategy, you apply that strategy to what you're doing, and if you have a couple of failures or losses, you start to maybe doubt your strategy. You start to doubt, hey, maybe the approach that I was using before is not working anymore. But if you continue to apply that same logic in the same way, eventually you get out of that drawdown period, you know? It's interesting. You were saying that, you know, you had, for example, like your mum on, you had, you know, a boxer on, you had a couple other people. Given the chance, do you think you would pivot to doing conversations a lot more often with people that are outside of the trading space, perhaps even, you know, sort of celebrities? If you had the chance, would you pivot towards that, or would you keep the show more towards the trading side of things?
I think I will. I think I will do it. That's the thing. I think I will pivot, not entirely, but I will bring in people who aren't traders but can benefit traders, in terms of whether it's like a expert on a certain part of the mind, you know, whether it's like expert on sleep, expert on health, expert on you know, psychology, right? But yeah, I would more than happy to have conversations with people who are influencers, people who are you know, celebrities, people who are, you know, titans in the industry, you know, sort of a reference to Titans of Tomorrow there, for example. But yeah, yeah, like I would be more than happy to, because again, it is universal. Really, success leaves clues, and those clues are universal, pretty much, you know, across any industry. So I'd be more than happy to do so. And yeah, I'd probably understand that the views might be lower, but the only way to make that pivot is to start and accept that process. But I'm not in a rush to do it either, and I won't force it. I'll just, when those opportunities come along, I'll record the episodes and again do our best. And you know, I think a big part of it will be utilizing whichever guest comes on, their audience, to be able to get the impact as well. But yeah, like, because you have to think as well, trading space and trading conversations, they can become limited after a certain amount of time. You know, because there's only so much you can ask about someone's journey, and you realize that even by now, like we've got 70 episodes released, and by now the journeys, even though they have their slight differences, very similar. You know, very similar. Most people struggle with handling losses. Most people struggle with greed. Most people struggle with over trading, lack of capital. You know, and they're very universal problems. But again, if you look at the 70, you'll see people who are at different levels as well, especially in the beginning when we were not as big. We were obviously interviewing people who were friends of mine who were still on their journey as traders, people who were just getting that profitability, for example, as well. But you'll notice the same patterns within those traders and the ones who are highly successful as well. So yeah, I think the pivot will take place soon, but I say soon, but I haven't planned anything. But I know it's on my mind. You know, I never wanted to make sure I just got stuck in the trading space, only because, you know, it will just be quite repetitive. But I do want to continue to provide the value to the traders, but in different ways, in terms of things they can work on, things they can learn about that could help their trading and their trading journey. Because a lot of the podcast probably helps profitable traders just as it helps people who aren't profitable yet. But we want to be able to help performance as well. You know, we want to help their performance so that, you know, not only are they learning, you know, especially the non-profitable traders, learning from the profitable traders, but also the profitable traders can learn, how can I increase my performance? You know, I'm doing well, but how can I make it even better, you know, through things outside of the charts? You know, even better, like outside of the charts, if I can increase my sleep, if I can look after my health, if I could, what was it? Sleep, health. They're the main two things that come to mind, but like, even psychology, obviously. So yeah, that it should be an interesting way. I'm not forcing it though. I want to obviously make sure I get the right guest for that, someone who's credible and has the correct knowledge to be able to speak on those things.
Right. It's interesting. I mean, you know, starting myself on a podcast kind of journey, it's interesting how you have guests on and you start to network with people and they kind of link up to other people and they link up to other people. And I think by now your web must be freaking huge because you've done a ton of podcasts, and some of them that haven't even made it to air. A lot of them, some of them won't even make it to air probably, but we'll chat about that later. For you as well, I mean, you're a workhorse. You really bang out those podcasts like crazy. Like I think the most commendable thing was when I saw you release like a machine gun volley of podcasts from FX Summit in Miami, and I was just like, how in the hell is he doing this? Like, this is unreal. Because at that point I had just started doing podcasts, and I'm like, this is so much work. How in the hell is he able to pump one out, do 10 a day and then have them all pumped out like a machine gun? And also, like, on that note as well, I want to talk a little bit more about FX Summit and how that was. Do you think that was like an inflection point in, your journey, or a big inflection point in, propelling you to a whole new level? Because I think that was probably a pretty big deal. I think you must have done a lot of growing firstly as a host, and also, personally. So I'd love to hear about that as well.
Definitely, yeah. So like FX Summit is a prime example of where people can hopefully recognize that is not just a one-man thing. I know my name's on the podcast, and obviously I'm the host of the podcast, so the face of it, but it's not just a one-man thing. It's not a huge team either. So there's me, there's the editor, Josh, who I do have an episode with, before we blew up, so people can check that out, Josh Fornally. I can't remember the number of the episode, but yeah, you can go back and check that out, for example. No doubt you'll probably see him again. And then there's our Reels editor as well, Evans. So there's 3 of us really who do all of this stuff. But then in Miami, we had the extra help of my 2 good friends, Falak and Noah. And without them, it wouldn't have been possible to do what we did. Gracefully, the FX Summit, Roy, Chart Addicts, gave us the booth, invited us to come and do the podcast and document our process over there. So we were invited to the FX Summit, which was incredible. I was invited to do a sort of a panel host for the funded traders, so like Kyle, Paladin, and a couple of others as well. So that was an incredible experience too. And then we were doing podcasts, we were doing podcasts within the Summit main hall, and it was a challenge, and that's the beauty of it. Like, it was a couple of things. There was a few great things that happened there. One, it was a challenge of something different. You got people walking in front of you, very loud background. You got loads of people and I didn't have anyone scheduled in. I had no one, as in like, okay, Q Banks is coming at this time, and Lamberel was coming at this time, and Tory's coming at this time. It was nothing like that. We literally just said, okay, we're going to get here, and then we're just going to grab people as much as possible. And then, again, I didn't even speak to anyone in terms of arranging them to come on. That's where Falak came in and Noah came in. They literally grabbed everyone, organized it, and made sure people were coming. And someone was coming off the pod, someone else was going into the pod, and I just had to sit there and just keep going and going and going. And then in terms of getting them out so fast, the funny thing is, this is the hilarious thing. So it wasn't even my idea. I didn't know how we were going to do it. We had 32 episodes, I believe. I think there's one more still to come out. And so that will come out soon, like in the next week, from the summit, that is. But it was actually my editor, Josh, his idea. He goes, Riz, we've got these episodes. The only way to really get this out, and the only thing that makes sense, is that we do a podcast a day every day for 30 days. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And the funny thing is, like, that's work for him, because he has to make the thumbnails, he has to edit them all, have them ready within the next like couple days, so then we can start banging them out. And I don't know if he realized what he said. He obviously did. And this is what I respect about this is where having the right people around you is so important, because without Josh, without Falak and Noah, for example, and without Evans, like, none of it would have been possible to pull off. So I don't want people to think that, Riz is just, Riz is great, Riz does this, Riz does that. Without these other people who are at the top of their game, right, and are good at what they do and their role, it won't be possible. It's always a team effort. It's always a joint effort. And you will get to see behind the scenes from the Miami Summit, to be fair, because we did vlog I vlogged basically from when I had 20,000 subscribers to when I hit 50. So when I went to like New York, for example, and filmed with Paladin and these guys, went to Dubai, first, and did one with Umar Ashraf, and then to Miami to finish it off. And we vlogged the whole thing. And you'll see what happened, the state of me by the end of it. It's because of Miami. Miami was literally 2 days at the summit where we did back-to-back every day, no food, no drink, just back-to-back podcasts. And then there was the yacht party after the first day, which me and Josh just worked the yacht party. We didn't even like chill or relax. That video will come out very soon as well that will come out on the vlog channel. So we're making some new channels to put this sort of different content on. So we'll have the vlog channel for that. And so just keep an eye on that, because that one's a really fun video. And then after that day, we did the second day of the summit. And then we did, what happened after that? then there was then we went and filmed another podcast, which is the last one to come out with T-Mac at his compound. And then the next day I did a podcast with Tori, Lambrao, Angelo. These are yet to come out still. And Rake Trades, who's an options trader. And by the time I was on Rake's podcast, you might be able to see it. You probably will. And Tori's podcast, I was absolutely dead. Like my whole energy was gone. I was literally on Rake's podcast, like I was literally passing out almost. But we still got it done. We still did, I think, 2.5 hours. And yeah, I can't wait for the vlog to come out just so you can see what it takes, you know, because it's very easy to see like this, where we're like sat having a good conversation and it looks great in terms of the quality, the lighting, the cameras. But like behind the scenes, when you do stuff like that, it takes so much. It takes so much, but it's worth it for the end result. Like to hear what you said there in regards to like getting them out. And then same like the summit, like having people come up to you. That was the first time where it was the audience in person, if you will. Having people come up to you, telling you, you know, how much they enjoy the podcast, how much it's helped them, how much it's, you know, motivated them, inspired them, and pushes them. And it's incredible. I had people like a guy from Australia come up to me and say it to me. Got obviously plenty of people from America, people from all over the world, people from all ages as well. And it was a wonderful experience, absolutely incredible. And the networking element was incredible as well. Like we literally built such a great network between like me, Casper, Kyle, Paladin, Omar, Kimmel, and a good few others as well, where we just literally have spoken ever since. And we just push each other, help each other. And it's an incredible network, you know.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, what was that like though? Because I think that's very important, the whole networking element. And I mean, it's one thing doing podcasts, because podcasts is a pretty formal environment. It's really, I mean, on occasion your podcast and maybe go after your podcast, you chat about business, you chat about whatever off camera, and that just tends to happen. But I think being in a more informal environment like that, and maybe it almost felt like, I mean, maybe not in your case, but for some of them, they were kind of like in a holiday kind of mode. They're not at home. They're in Miami. They're on a yacht. You know, and so you make friendships and relationships with people. How was that, you know, and how did that affect your, you know, your psychology and your motivation, not only in trading, but obviously with content creation? And I know that you know, created friendships with those people that you met, like, you know, Casper, Kimmel, Kyle, all of them. How did that change your way you went about creating social media content and trading?
In terms of like the social media content side, because obviously I do podcasts and they do more, you know, case studies and technical side of things. It wasn't too much of a difference there. It was more so just like we keep on top of the quality and we support each other's videos and give it constructive criticism, etc., to help each other in that way. So that's really incredible and really helpful, of course, to have that. And to have other people who understand, you know, conversations about content. Yeah, majority of people don't. They don't understand obviously what it takes and the intricacies. So having other people around you who do understand that is a breath of fresh air, to be fair. So that's another benefit. But in terms of like trading wise, it was incredibly eye-opening for trading, because I don't really talk about my trading. A lot of people assume I don't trade, which is absolutely fine to me. I made not really a pledge, but I just made a decision about, I think it was about 18 months ago now maybe, where I said I just won't post about trading. I won't post my charts or my trades, because I would always find this thing where I'm in a trade and I'd want to post it straight away before it's even like maybe moved to my profit target and stuff like that. And I just hated that feeling and hated this weird impulse that I had. So I just stopped doing that. But like this week, for example, I had like I've got a EG short from last week that's done really well, but I just don't post about it because I'm not bothered. But in terms of trading wise, being around these individuals, and seeing people who are multi-7-figure capital funded and regardless of funding, but just being absolutely insanely disciplined and really thinking at a much higher level than just the retail trading space, more so about how they can trade on that institutional side and you know, just acquire more and more capital, but in such a professional way, not just, let me just try this challenge out. No, but very professional in their understanding, in their mannerisms, and in their actions most of all. It was very inspiring for me to then push myself and just like make sure I don't get complacent on that trading side. Because you can get complacent because you're making good steady income, you know, it's enough to live your life and invest into a podcast, and the podcast is doing well, and you know, and you have these other business ventures, and everything's fine. It's so easy to get complacent on the trading side when, you know, why did we get into trading? We all got into trading, yes, for freedom. So yeah, once you do acquire that, of course, that could be enough for some people, and for most it should be, and it probably will be. But some of us are of the mindset when we got into it, and some of us kept that, and that's where looking at and being reminded of that by, you know, Kyle and Paladin in particular, of that you got in to be one of the best. You know, you got in there to be one of the best, to do some incredible things, not just sort of average or just be good, you know, but to be great. So they remind me of that, and the accountability aspect of not only trading, but also like we all wear these Whoop bands. If you see, they look like a. It looks like an ankle monitor. It looks like a house arrest thing. But yeah, this like tracks obviously our sort of activity, our sleep, and you can create groups. And we create a community, and we push each other. You know, we push each other to make sure we're working out, keeping on top of our game. And yeah, you can't put a price on those sort of things. And one thing I'll say to people out there, because I know a lot of people will probably be hearing this and thinking, oh, I wish I had that, or I don't have that. I'll be honest with you, the best thing you can ever do is not try and chase it or try and like force it. The best thing you can do is to look and be the person. So don't look, sorry, be that person. Be the person that you want to be around, and those people will come into your circle. Because you have to put yourself into those positions. Like I wasn't going to go Miami because, you know, now that this is actually finally the first podcast I've done actually post my my second child's birth. Sorry, so like I wasn't going to go Miami because thank you, bro. But because my wife was due the next month, so it was a bit irresponsible of me, a bit risky. But I wasn't going to do Miami. But then when Roy invited me over, and I recognized like the opportunity to network, podcast, and just experience something like that was very great. You know, I said to the wife, look, I'll go for 4 or 5 days max. So literally go there, do the summit, do the pods, fly back. You know, and she's very understanding, supportive, which also another person as part of the podcast, to be fair, who I missed off the list. So I'm going to get in trouble for that. But she came up with the name Words of Rizdom, to be fair, as well. And yeah, without her, it wouldn't be possible too. But yeah, like, you know, taking those sacrifices and putting yourselves in their environment to be around those people too. You know, it's so easy just to sit there and just be on your screen, be on your laptop, and not put yourself in the environment to be around traders, or not even just traders, but be around high level, disciplined and successful people. You know, go to networking events, put yourself in the communities, not only put yourself in the community, but actively speak. The amount of people who join a Discord and just sit there and just watch, like where's the value you're getting from there other than watching, when you could be building a connection with someone else who could help you build a multi-7-figure business, and you don't even know it because you're not willing to take that action, take that step. And, you know, I can imagine if I didn't go to Miami, I wouldn't be as close as I am with Paladin, Omar, Kimmel, Casper, you know, Kyle, and the rest of the guys who were there as well. Like, I would not be as close. Like Umzi as well. I don't want to forget because I know Umzi will come after me. But yeah, like, you know, and you not only build like a professional relationship, you build like, you know, got good banter, you have a good laugh, you know, people who understand what you're going through. You know, and they can make jest about, you know, your video doing bad, you know, so you get out of a funk, or jest about a bad trading day or week, you know, and just say like, why are you being a pussy for? Why are you being an absolute chicken? Just get over it. You know, you need those people too. You need those people to push you and just make you realize it's not that deep. Just keep moving forward, keep working. But the only way to find them is to be the person first, most of all, and then put yourself in the right places. You know, don't hunt for them. They will come to you. You'll come across them naturally, you know.
Yeah, I think it's important to literally put yourself out there. And I think that that's something that I had to force myself to do myself. I think it was, you know, it's a difficult thing for me because I'm more of an introverted person. And I found trading through literally looking for something that I can create, you know, an income for myself out of nothing, right? And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. With trading, it's not something that you have to go out and find leads. You have to go out and make phone calls. You have to go out and put content out. You're literally just sitting in front of a screen. You're learning a methodology, and it's a very much me versus me kind of thing, right? Whereas if you get into, for example, social media, if you get into marketing, whatever it is, you have to go out there and network to find, you know, the success that you're looking for. But I think that it's easy to become complacent if it is just you versus you. And a lot of people say, hey, don't compare yourself to others. But I think that that's actually BS. I think you should compare yourself to others. There is a healthy way to do it. I think there's a healthy way to say, hey, I've become complacent. This person is doing this. They're a person just like me. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not disabled. What's wrong with me? Why can't I go and do the exact same thing? Yes, maybe you've reached that level. And I think when we get to a certain level, and I struggled with this recently, you get to a level where you find your financial freedom and you're like, hey, I've got all this time now. I could quite easily just sit back, trade my couple hours a day, and then just go and do whatever hobby I want to do, or, you know, waste my time doing something else. But when you put yourself in that network of people, I think it allows you to continue to push for bigger things, because sometimes you don't know that there are bigger things out there. Sometimes you think that this is the pinnacle of what I can do, but you see people that came from the same place as you doing more than you, and that pushes you to do more. And for me, that was a huge thing. Firstly, like, to get into a state of profitability with my trading, but also obviously social media, which again, pretty much the same thing, to be honest. Social media and trading are very much the same thing. And once I met somebody that was doing and came from a probably more disadvantaged place than I was, doing exactly what I wanted to do, and I saw it was possible with my own two eyes, at not just third person but first person. That's a pretty important distinction, because if you hear a story about somebody, it doesn't quite imprint that possibility that it's real into your mind, the same as if you meet that person and they tell you themselves and show you themselves. So for me, that was huge. Firstly, to get out of, you know, working a normal job and into a place of financial freedom, but also moving from that, which you can easily become complacent with, to a, you know, not just surviving but thriving. And so yeah, for me that was huge. And I think that a lot of people get into the trading game and just become complacent because they just completely isolate themselves. So it's interesting. I mean, you said your wife literally came up with Words of Rizdom, which is insane. I don't think you've spoken about that before. That's really amazing. What for you, when you started out, and also every single day, what is your reason for doing what you do? That's another thing, because you could quite easily just get up every day and push yourself, because you push yourself, you really work. What is it that pushes you like that? And I mean, not just with your podcast, your trading, but also the vision that you have and, you know, the goal that you're working towards. Because I mean, for a lot of people, they'd be like, hey, you got a huge podcast already. What's the big deal? So what is that vision that you have?
So vision-wise, and the reason I do it all is legacy. You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money that you make, no matter how much, you know, no matter how popular you may be, how many followers you got, it all means nothing in the end. When you die, that's all gone. You know, yeah, you could leave the money to your family. You can't pass on your followers. You know, you can't pass on your subscribers. Someone might buy your channel. I don't know, but it's all worthless. Like, it's all meaningless, right? But what is meaningful is your legacy. You know, well, how people remember you when you're gone. You know, like, my goal has always been, even from a child, is to be able to leave an impact. You know, help. I wanted to save the world. It was a very specific line, if you will. As I've grown older, I understand that, you know, saving the world in that sort of manner, or with that sort of superhero mentality, might not be possible in that sense. However, if you impact enough people, their minds, you know, you just plant one seed of inspiration, motivation, belief, any of these things, and then directly as well. So that's through the podcast and the content, for example. But if you're able to do that, you will change the world one step at a time, because then that person may then do the same for 2 other people, and then that network just grows exponentially, you know? So that's why having the largest viewership, so subscribers and followers, is very important, to be able to reach more and more and more people, so that the legacy grows and grows and grows, and the help can grow. Alongside that, though, through obviously making the money and through having a successful business and having a successful podcast, you are granted opportunities to be able to help people in different ways. You know, whether it's helping people find a network, whether it's educating them, whether it's using the money that you've made to be able to, you know, build schools or hospitals or provide water to places that don't have these things. And now to create a vision like that and to cement that legacy. So what it boils back to is this, is that when I'm dead and gone, I want people to be able to remember the name. Not because of, I want the name to mean anything, but more so what is attached to that name was this person helped in this way, provided this value. So when we talk about like Marcus Aurelius, someone who was around a very long time ago, right? But yet we still know his name and attach value to the name based off the value he provided thousands of years ago, right? Look at Muhammad Ali. Sadly passed away not too long ago, but, you know, his prime years of his impact and value were decades ago. But yet we still consider him a great person and will continue to consider him a great for a very long time, right? Look at people like Malcolm X, people like Tupac, people like, I'm going to forget his name. Sun Tzu, is it? Is that how you pronounce it? I hope so. I hope so. But look at all these figures from different periods of time in different industries with different ways of how they provided value, right? Look at Joe Rogan as a prime one. He will go down in history. His legacy is already cemented based on the value that he has brought through over 1,000, maybe coming into 2,000 episodes of a podcast, you know? And that requires hard work. You know, if you want to do something great and you want to do something as big as that and have an impact, it requires hard work. Now, to be honest with you, though, it requires hard work to be successful as a whole. If you want to be successful and you want to have freedom, it's going to require work. Like freedom in terms of, you know, a lot of people say freedom, and what they think about is like being able to just wake up and do whatever the hell you want and go sleep. I used to be one of these people. I used to think the same way. But the truth is, freedom really looks like freedom for your family, right? You create the freedom for your family, but you still work, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to have to work like a 9 to 5, or you're going to have to work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day, but you're going to still be grinding. You're still going to be putting consistent work in because you're providing freedom to 5 other people, 10 other people, 20 other people. For that to happen, someone has to sacrifice. And it's whether you're willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good or not. And I'm just willing to sacrifice myself for the greater good, not only through the value of the podcast, but also for my family. Not to say that I'm the best family member in the world. I'm terrible. You know, you ask my siblings or my mom, they'll tell you that I'm literally so locked into what I'm doing. I don't speak to many people. I don't spend too much time with everyone right now. And maybe that will be a regret in the future. You never know. You know, when it comes down to it, and I'm on my deathbed, if you will, I might turn around and say, you know what, I wish I didn't try so hard in business and I tried more with the family and spend more time with them. You never know, right? All I know is why I'm doing it is to do the best possible chance of me providing freedom to all of them. Because it's not like I've got a massive family. You know, when I was younger, my dad passed away when I was like 5. And because of that, I think when I grew up, I was thinking that I would die very young. I used to always think I would die because he died when he was like 30. I don't know the exact age, but like 33, 34 maybe, right? So I used to think, you know, my assumption is, and my way of thinking subconsciously will be, okay, dad died then, you'll probably die the same, you know, you'll probably die the same age. So I used to assume this. So I think that's where it stems from as well. Like, I need to create this legacy because I'm not going to be here. Another fear that I would have is like losing my wife, for example, probably because of losing my father. Was probably like this fear of losing my wife and having to raise, you know, the kids by myself, you know? And when I'm on a podcast and I say that, I'm cool because I know I'm on a podcast. But if I was to think like that, which I did like when my wife gave birth, a week and a half ago, when I was thinking about that thought, because I've had that thought before, I had that thought, you know, even when I was growing up in terms of, one day when I have a wife, you know, I'll probably end up losing her, knowing this life. I would get teary. So even like a week and a half ago, like the tears would start to come to my eyes and I would just kind of push it back and be like, listen, leave that. You don't know what life has in store for you, so you can't worry about that. But that's where it all stems from. It all stems from these experiences and then the vision of what I want to do, the impact I want to have. And, to do that, you have to work hard. Like, you can't, if you want that lifestyle that everyone says they want, you have to work hard. I think the issue is that you see, especially in our space, in the trading space, we see a lot of scammers who have, or not even necessarily scammers, but deceivers even, right? People who deceive, right? And they have the Lambos and they have these lifestyle. And it doesn't mean just because you have a Lamborghini, you're a scammer, right? But within our space, and not only our space, but even like the drop shipping space and this online like e-commerce space, if we will, and the Wi-Fi money space, we see a lot of deceivers, right? And they make it seem like, you don't have to work that hard. Just master your skill and that's it, done. But the reality is you always will have to work hard. You always will. The reason why they can get away with it and make it seem that way at least is because they are deceiving, right? But you have to remember one thing with these individuals. A lot of people get caught up trying to argue with them and spend time trying to hate on them and spread negativity. Why? With these individuals, things will always go full circle. Their money is limited, right? Because all it takes is one mistake. And if not on them, the karma will come to them in some form. So don't even worry about spending time on that, right? But the reason why it may seem easy or like one day you'll make it so you don't have to work hard is because of maybe these images you see online. But the reality is, even them, they have to keep deceiving. They have to work hard at deceiving and being fake to be able to keep that up and keep the income coming in. So even they have to work hard, but just in a whole different way that we don't want to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of the time, I think it has to do a lot with the generation that we're living in. People want things quicker, and they want things the shortcut way. They don't want to put in the work. They don't want to, they don't want to spend the time to work now and then reap the rewards later. They want the rewards right away. So I think, and for example, people will shame us for working hard. That's the thing that I can't get over. People are literally hating on you for working hard and saying, hey, you're a tryhard, you're trying to, you're throwing your life away, you're not enjoying your life. And you're like, but life's not just about enjoying yourself all the time. Life's about hard work. And in those small bits of enjoyment that you get are that much more enjoyable because you worked hard for it. I mean, people nowadays have the mindset of everything has to be nice and enjoyable and fun all the time. But think about that. That's pretty much the definition of hell, because how could you ever enjoy yourself if everything is enjoyable? It's kind of like the paradox of people saying like, hey, I don't know if I actually want to go to heaven one day, because in heaven things are supposed to be good all the time. How are we going to enjoy? There has to be bad for there to be
exactly
good.
Yeah, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, and I think a lot as well is about people wanting to enjoy everything right now rather than working hard and waiting for later. And they can't really wrap their minds around it because the social media and media at large is all about do what makes you happy now. Do what makes you happy in general. Not do what's hard now and then reap the rewards later.
Yeah.
It's also about delaying gratification as well. I don't think people have a concept of that. It's a thing of like, hey, if I can do it now, I'll do it now. No, rather work hard now and reap the rewards later because it's going to be better. And I don't think that people have that mindset. Hey, why don't I just go out there and scam people? Because I'm just going to get things now, I'm going to enjoy it sooner rather than actually working to become a good trader. I'm just going to pretend that I'm a good trader and make a ton of money. And I think that that's why there's a rise in that, because media at large is telling people it's okay to just want to be happy. Doesn't matter what you have to do to get it. If you can get it sooner because, life's short. And I think it's also a thing of people are, and this gets a bit deeper, but I feel like another important thing is religion. I think that religion plays a big part in what tells people what's right and what's wrong, right? And when there is no God and there is no religion, what's to tell you to do the right thing? Because nobody's watching you, right? And so I think that that's also why there's a rise in those kinds of things. So yeah, to segue into a completely different space, before we go down the rabbit hole, right? ICT, okay? We have to talk about ICT because I'm an ICT trader. You've interviewed a lot of ICT traders. You interviewed ITC Concepts
Yeah.
kit.
Mhm.
What was that like? And did you get a lot more insight into, I watched the episode, but obviously I want you to tell my listeners, what was it like getting an insight into the elusive character that is ICT? And obviously he speaks very highly about him, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding him. So what kind of insights did you get from that conversation?
Yeah, no, it's very powerful. I've been lucky enough to interview a lot of ICT traders. I've also interviewed some ICT haters, for example, as well. And it's very interesting, the polar opposites and the reactions that he gets. The funny thing is, the haters end up getting more views because of the hate, which is really weird. Because if obviously you don't agree with it, you wouldn't watch it, right? But people watch it even more. So like with Kit, though, for example, there's a reason you have to be strategic with how you balance the conversations. And this is what people don't understand. So like I had someone called Sam KB on, right? Who, really doesn't like ICT. But that's why I balance it with having like Kit on, Ali ICT. So I actually have more ICT traders who are pro ICT than I do anyone who is a hater, for example. But people don't recognize what a podcast is meant to be in terms of conversations. Talking of conversations, though, the conversation with Kit was incredible. Like he was the first one I sort of spoke to really, really had like a really mellow and a really interesting energy to him, especially in his description of ICT concepts and the man who is ICT as well, especially considering that Kit has spoken to ICT directly one-on-one for I think he said 6-hour call or something, and they were just literally just talking back and forth and having a really wholesome conversation. So yeah, it was really interesting. That was probably the first conversation I ever had where I left it thinking, I probably need to learn ICT, or I need to look into ICT some more, Similar with Ali ICT as well. Similar with Ali ICT, again, Ali is a bit more balanced in terms of his viewpoint, so he's not too okay, I'm just pro ICT. He obviously really respects the man and, says that he owes his success in terms of trading to ICT as well, but he's very balanced in terms of, some of the negatives that people say about ICT. He understands why and stuff and doesn't get too polarized. But even him, when I sat down with him, it was the same thing. It was I should probably go learn ICT. The in-depth nature of the conversation, the descriptive nature of the strategies or the concepts or models that they were explaining was incredible, and especially Ali, he gave such a great methodology of thinking about how is there an algorithm, right? So that's the big debate that people like to talk about. And his was literally look, everything's run on algorithms now, even social media, right? Everything. So you think the largest financial market in the world wouldn't be run on algorithms? I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes complete sense, And so it's such a great, such a great thing to be able to speak to the various sides, but especially the ICT traders, because they do have a really, they have a lot of clarity. The ones I've spoken to so far, they have a lot of clarity of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and how they go about it in the first place, And it's not like they just learn ICT and bang, they're suddenly successful. They spent their time, Kyle spent many years. Ali spent many years, I'm sure Kit spent many years, So it was it's very interesting to hear that even though they learn ICT, they still go through the same struggles that every trader has to go through. The difference being, though, is that they stuck to it and they have just a deeper understanding and confidence behind their model and their edge,
Right. And how difficult is it for you to stay neutral on these topics? Because again, you've got people from both directions. You've got people on pro and against. So is it difficult to remain neutral? Is it difficult to keep your questioning in a manner that is going to promote conversations for both ends? Because if you put yourself on one end, it's going to be difficult to have a conversation on the other end, right?
It can be. It depends on the person. So but yeah, no, you are right. For me, I just let them speak. I don't necessarily ask them, do you think this person's a scam, or do you think this person's wrong, or do you think this is bad? I'll just, see where the conversations go. So even with Sam KB, for example, I didn't even ask him about ICT. He just started talking about ICT. He just brought him up and started going off on one. And that's fine. That's no problem. There's nothing wrong with that. but yeah, then we spoke about ICT, and I'll just ask questions, and I'll just take on board what they're saying, and give offer questions back. And I'm still working on being better at playing devil's advocate. So trying to, bring the other side through me, for example. I think the beauty with the ICT side of things in terms of, that topic is that I haven't actually watched ICT videos. So I don't have a bias in terms of I've watched them and I believe in them and I, understand them. And so therefore I need to defend them, So that makes it easier for me to just kind of be neutral because I've not watched them and I haven't looked into it and I haven't bothered trying to look into him to try and get any negative things to say or anything. So I'm just balanced in that way. So it's easy for me to then have Sam KB on and then have ICT concepts on, for example, I think it put off ICT to begin with, the Sam KB episode. He blocked me. And then I managed to get him to unblock me recently. So that was good. Because don't get me wrong, at the end of the day, I would love to do a podcast with ICT. And I know, again, my naivety of not actually researching him or knowing him, in depth, like a lot of his students do. I get the feedback from his students, he doesn't want to be in the spotlight and he doesn't want to be, he would never do a podcast and, he's not into the production, et cetera, et cetera. And I respect that. But for me, it's more how can I not try to do a podcast with this man? Because, the whole podcast is about conversations with, industry leaders and people who have value, who wouldn't have more value than probably the biggest person in our industry than ICT, right? So I will try and I'll still continue to try, even though I know I think he said no, on Twitter recently. But I'll still try just because I would regret it if I didn't. If he does go in November and doesn't come back, I would regret it if I didn't. But for me, it would be look, you have such a powerful conversation. Nothing beats an in-person, seeing the person, seeing them speak, seeing their mannerisms, seeing their energy, their emotions as they speak about certain topics. Nothing beats that. But yeah, having people even when we SMC, for example, when Raja talks bad about SMC, I trade SMC, but I still don't say to him, hey man, I trade SMC, stop talking rubbish and start doing, I just say, okay, why don't you like it? Okay, that makes sense why you think this way. Okay, cool, and then I'll have further conversations with him or ask other people, what did you think to so-and-so saying this and so on and so forth. So it's about keeping the conversation flowing and giving that balance. That's the whole point of a podcast. That's why it's easy for me to do because I understand that. While a lot of people out there don't understand that, which is absolutely fine because it's not their job to, right? I just find it funny sometimes when I get comments like, you're just an ICT hater or you're just this channel's just become about ICT. And I'm like, look, there's 70 episodes and of them, in terms of ICT's name being brought up, it's 9 episodes, so it's nothing. It's like a fraction, right? But it's fine. I don't care because it's I just keep going. At the end of the day, there's always going to be those people. It does not matter. You can't put weight into it. But don't get me wrong. Like I said, I'm always trying to improve in terms of the devil's advocate side. I'm just too nice. I just feel like I'm too nice. I don't want to end up having a fight. But you know what? After the Raja episode, having a fight isn't too bad because it's good for the views. So, so it's absolutely fine. If I end up getting hit one day, no problem. I'll do it for you guys. Remember?
Yeah. Honestly, I think that it's interesting because ICT has almost become like a trading deity of some kind. Mm-hmm. People literally have turned him into some kind of god, literally. And I think it also has to do with his mysteriousness because he doesn't like being in the spotlight. He did one interview ever on some obscure person's podcast and it was massive. So I think if you did one with him, it would actually break the internet fully. Seriously. But I think he knows that as well. And so maybe that's why he's also hesitant. And like he says, he wants to stay out of the spotlight. But going back to Raja Banks was, the first podcast was huge. Second podcast, arguably bigger. I think it was, obviously the reel that went around with, the teaser of that video was oh, was it real? Was it scripted? Was it real or was it scripted?
No, it was real. So basically what we did was, the only thing I did with him is I said to him, the first time I asked you really nice questions, I just got to know you. And the feedback in terms of comments were why didn't you ask him about this? Or why didn't you ask him about that? So all I said to him was, I'm going to ask you hard questions before the episode. I said, I'm going to ask you hard questions this time, because, last time I asked you, it was basically I said, last time I was good cop, this time I'm going to be bad cop, And I feel if you notice in the episode, he was answering them to begin with, but some of them are a bit repetitive in terms of like the broker one. And you heard him say once or twice, like, leave this topic now. Then I asked him one more time. And I think it was just I get it though, because his explanation of why he did that was simply because, he gets a lot of hate online, 24/7, constant, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. So then him coming to do the podcast, especially after the first one, I imagine as well, probably just caught him a bit off guard. And I get it, because I can imagine, I don't get annoyed too much. I don't get that much hate anyway. But let's say like the Sam KB episode, got a ton of hate for that one. Ton of hate coming off that one. People saying, you're just trying to do this, you're just trying to do that. And I'm like, look, I don't do anything. Like, don't get me wrong, it's my job to make sure I title these reels in a polarizing way. That's my job. I don't care. I don't care if people like it or not. That is what I have to do. I'm not going to turn around and be like, let me not use this reel just because it'll piss off this other person that I don't know. I'm going to say that's the whole point of it. And again, if people don't understand that, no problem. That's not my job. Like you can either understand it or not. That's not my job. But yeah, so with Raja, it wasn't scripted. It was real. It was just more so like I told him I'm going to ask him hard questions, but he might not have realized like how much I'll go. I could have gone more. Don't get me wrong. No doubt, I could have like really tried to push him and stuff. But I'm not trying to offend people. I'm not trying to, anger them. I'm just trying to get the questions that people want to know answered. I'll try my best, and if they can't be answered or people don't want to answer them, that's fine. That's no problem.
So he really did get that upset. Like, I was like, nah, this was a very clever marketing trick, but that can't be real. But it was real, right? He really did get that upset.
Like, this is what people were saying, that is it scripted or not? So I started playing into it, like saying, is it? You'll have to find out. You have to find out.
Yeah.
But the one thing that people said, this is an interesting one. People said was like, he says, where's the door? Because what happens is that's the studio in Dubai. And we come through the door. Let's say the door's there. We come through the door over here. And then when we sit down, the person working there pulls a curtain and puts a shelf in front of it, which I didn't even realize. Because when he went up to the door and was like, where's the door? I was like, where is the door? Yeah, I said the same. I was like, where is the door? Where's it? And then I realized, I was like, oh, damn, they put a curtain and stuff. And that's why this guy actually comes up and moves the shelf, And so people were trying to be like, yeah, this guy's talking rubbish. He's saying, where's the door? But they don't realize, like, these are the things that happen behind the scenes that, people don't realize that, even me, I was like, where's the door gone? Like, it was right there. But yeah, like with those moments, it's not like, it would be too hard to script, you know what I mean? Because we're not actors, we're not people who know how to do that sort of thing. Especially me, I don't even use a script for any of my videos. Like, even the reels I make, or like the specific reels, or like any YouTube videos I make, I've never used a script ever, because I'm just bad at it. I can't do it, And even with like podcasting, I don't write down any questions. I don't, keep notes or anything. I just go, because if I can't do it, it just does not work, And that might be one of the reasons why he might have got angry, because I was literally reading questions off my phone. I was literally going, this person said this and this person said that, and maybe because of that, it was a bit more blunt than it could have been if I just kind of just said, these are the sort of questions that have come up and people say these sort of things. Maybe that would have been a better delivery. You never know.
Yeah. Well, okay. So now I'm going to ask you some hard questions.
I just throw my laptop
Roger
across the
Banks.
screen.
Roger, what is your take on what he was saying? Because obviously his explanation was very repetitive. He continually said, oh, here's, I made real money off of this. This is the withdrawals, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, but clearly there is a conflict of interest there. There is. So what is your take on it? And I mean, obviously it's not your place to say what is or isn't true, but I would be curious to know what your thoughts are behind that, because obviously you're a neutral party when you're interviewing him, but it would be interesting to know what your actual core thoughts are on it.
No, for sure. So like, in terms of like conflicting, I get the point. I get everyone's point. When everyone tries and says like, oh, you can fake and manipulate the broker, the MT4 and withdrawals, etc. I do get the point, because I've seen that before. In a place that I used to work where people were doing that. So I've seen that. I know it does exist. I think the difference for me in terms of what he's doing is he has a broker. At the end of the day, it's not like he's doing an investment. It's not like he's doing a prop firm. He's not like he's doing a anything else. It's a broker at the end of the day. And even if, let's say, it's a B-book broker, because I'm not sure, I don't know what it is, but let's say it's a B-book broker. Again, is that negative? It's not. Only in the sense that he doesn't control what trades get placed. He doesn't control, who's a winner and who's a loser. That's down to the trader, right? It depends. I've never used his broker, so I can't say, the spread's good, or is there slippage, is there anything? I know one of the things he promotes about is low latency, meaning that, there's good liquidity on his broker. Again, I haven't used it, right? But I also haven't seen anyone or seen any reports of anyone saying, oh, I was trying to trade on this broker and the slippage is really bad and the spreads are really bad. So I haven't seen the negative side either. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, him having a broker. I know a lot of people try and talk about him used to being friends with Uncle Ted from America, who was in that big CoffeeZilla thing. But again, they're two separate things in terms of that guy who did a PAM account or did like an investment thing. So it's a whole different thing than just a broker. But one thing I will say is Raja wouldn't have been able to build his name unless he had value, right? He definitely wouldn't have built an audience if he was just losing on a live stream all the time, because why would someone build an audience if they're just losing, right? People wouldn't watch that, in my opinion anyway. And then on top of that as well is that he's an incredible businessman. Like Magic Keys, for example, the amount of people I know who say they can't trade without Magic Keys is absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And that's innovation. That's not a broker. That's not a prop firm. That's not a course. That is something innovation, something unique that anyone could have thought of, but he thought of it and he developed it. And look how well he's done with it. Alongside that as well is innovate, and then even his broker as well. Like at the end of the day, it's not easy to run a brokerage. It costs money to be able to promote a brokerage as well and build a client base. Which, if I'm not mistaken, I think he said he had. I don't know if it was 20,000 or 50,000. I know the big two different numbers, but it was one of those two, I believe. But he said he had a lot of clients, and that's not easy to do. As well as him saying as well, and I've seen the screenshots and like the videos that he's put up in terms of like him used to trading on Vantage, so not his broker. I get people, again, I do understand people's sentiment of saying, why doesn't he just trade on another broker now? Which I asked him. And he was just like, why should I give them business? Which, okay, fair enough. That's your answer. I get it. I do. But again, it's like, look, he's already done that in the past as well. And at the end of the day, for me, what I try and focus on is the value, because I'll be honest with you, when I sit down with a lot of these people, a lot of them, Raja, anyone, pretty much, everyone I've had on the podcast, they'll tell me about another influencer in the space who's not a real trader, right? Or who's fake, right? And if I start listening to everyone, I'll never be able to have anyone on the podcast ever, right? Because everyone's always going to have an opinion. Everyone's always going to say this person's fake, this person's not, and you'll just never know, right? So I just try not to put a focus. That's why I don't talk about technicals. That's why I don't tell them to get the charts up or break down your trading history to me or break down your last trade or mark out this chart, because I'm really not focused on the technical side. I'm more focused on your journey and your value. What value can you provide in this conversation as well as to others? And one of the biggest reasons why I respect Raja a lot is his actual character. Two things. One is obviously what he described in terms of his character, Raja Banks. He described on the podcast, which I respected because he didn't have to. But he said, like, I play a polarizing character, on purpose on social media because that's how social media works, right? I respected that because not many people would admit to that. And then secondly, I respect him as an individual because one, he didn't have to come on our podcast. Because bear in mind, now it would make sense, right? If everyone saw the podcast now, yeah, of course, Raja, everyone would want to go on that podcast, right? Back then, I had 5,000 subscribers and I didn't have any big names on the podcast list at all, right? And he had probably 180,000 followers. And, he was basically where he's, just slightly below where he is now. So why would he decide to go on my podcast back then? You know what I mean? So I have to respect him for that because it was his episode that started the snowball effect. So I have to respect him for that. But more importantly, him as an individual, when he came, the biggest thing that stands out to me every time is that when he came into the studio, I'd gone to the studio. I'm there like a bit, not flustered, but I was like, okay, big guest, got to be ready, all that prepping, making sure, I got my questions in my head, like what sort of questions should I ask? Don't be too nervous, whatever. So I'm sat there and I haven't spoken. I've said hi to the guy who works there and that's it. And I've sat down. But Raja comes in, Raja says hi, what's your name? Ask the guy's name. He's laughing and joking with the guy working there and everything. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to do that. He could just sit down, do the podcast, and leave if he wants. No, he speaks to the guy, laughs and jokes with the guy, remembers his name on the second time we go there as well. But most of all, afterwards as well, we go for dinner and he pays for the dinner. He ordered something absolutely insane, like some weird looking shisha thing that cost $1,000. So he better pay because I wasn't going to pay for that. but he didn't. There was no argument. He just paid for the dinner. And most of all, though, he's very supportive. He's very much like, Riz, you need to make sure you smash it. Make sure you work hard and make sure you become one of the best. And not just to me, but he was saying it to everyone at that table. There were people like one of my good friends in Dubai there, who's a trader as well. One of my good friends who was there at the time as well. Like, he was just saying it to everyone, not just myself. And not only that, after I left, same thing. Like, he was saying, Riz, make sure you're working hard. Just sending me random voice notes here and there, just like, make sure you're pushing, make sure you're working hard. And then on top of that, he helped promote the episode. Do you know how many people I get on the podcast and I do the podcast with them and they don't even promote the episode afterwards? Even now. Yeah. Right. And I think that's just kind of disrespectful because it's like, we did this for you. Like, you're gaining something from this as well. You're going to gain from this. We're trying to help build your value. Because at the end of the day, on the podcast, I speak like for 5% of it, if anything. Right. This is about you. So why wouldn't you want to promote your own podcast, really? But yeah, he, again, at the time, I didn't have many followers. He promoted it. He shared all the posts. He commented on them, liked them, he was there for the live chat. And so, yeah, that's why I respect him, because I put more focus on the person itself. And a lot of people might not know the person. They might only know the person from the videos or the tweets or whatever. And I get that. But I put more focus on the person itself, and I understand what people's thoughts are in terms of these questions. And I try to ask some of these questions, of course. And some of the answers maybe people weren't happy with. Some of the answers maybe could have been better. But at the end of the day, I think like he's provided a lot of value to a lot of people from what I've seen. Because no, you can't build an audience without providing value, of some kind. And, equally, I have seen for the hate messages, I've seen all the love and the positive messages as well of people who said he's really helped my trading. I've used his methods to get profitable, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing I do think is very unfortunate in the space is people say, oh, why don't we see a list of his students, getting payout certificates and stuff, as if that's the measure of success. Don't get me wrong, it is a measure of success, but it's not the measure of success. Because it does come down to the value that people have gotten from him, and it might not even be value in terms of his trading style is the one that I use to be profitable. It might just be literally he said this one valuable thing on this podcast or this video that he made, and it really shaped and pushed me to do this, and this.
Did you have a relationship with Raja before you did?
I didn't even know Raja. You know what I did to get Raja on the podcast? I just got to Dubai and I was walking through this lobby. And earlier that day, I'd seen on Raja's story this car that he'd posted. And then when I was walking through this lobby, I looked up and that car was there. And then I realized he was in Dubai. So then I went on my story and said, everyone, go tag Raja Banks and tell him to come on do a podcast with me. And then loads of people tagged him. Wow. I say loads, but I didn't have that many followers back then. But like maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 people tagged him. And then he messaged me and said, hey, man, like, let's do a podcast. I have to, at the time, it was really like, we were very lucky because he had to go back for a funeral to Pakistan. And then he said, I might come back, I might not. So if he said might not, if he wasn't able to come back, we would never have got that episode. But luckily he was able to. He came, we did the podcast, and then the rest is history, yeah. Now we've done 2.
Right. And I think it's very easy, like you said, to do these interviews, and people have these preconceived notions and they expect you to sort of reflect them. So like, for example, Raja Banks is a very controversial guy. People are all like, oh, he's a fake guru, blah, blah, blah. He's got his own broker, etc. And I mean, there's obviously probably quite a few other examples of the same kind of thing. Like I said, you're able to stay neutral through all of this. But in your mind, right, if you had to give people advice on how to go about finding somebody to model their trading after, what are like some red flags that you would look to advise people to stay away from when it comes to modeling their trading after somebody? So if, for example, they wanted to follow Raja Banks, what red flags would go off that would stop you from going for them, or what green flags would, for example, say, okay, cool, this is someone I want to model my trading after?
It goes back to value again in terms of, how much free value does that person provide? So look at Casper, great example. The amount of free value that Casper puts out, people might not even have to pay him, right? They might not even have to pay him because he puts out that much free value. You could even say the same about Raja in terms of the amount of live streams he's done over the years and value. That's why he's got his following, right? Like, again, because of the value he's provided. Red flags wise, like lifestyle marketing. So like that's another thing with Raja. Like now he has cars, now he has watches, and he just posts these things. But he built the audience before he had all those things. It's not like he got those things and then got the audience. He had those things before. He had the followings before, and then he got those things after, right? And he's even admitted it himself that he's had way more eyes on him ever since he got the stuff. Ever since he's got the car and the watches, right? And he's admitted that. He said, look, way more people respond to me, way more people, interact with my content and watch my content ever since I got that. But luckily for him, or rightly for him, should I say, is that he, did the live streams before that point. But that would be a red flag if someone is using these things, and that's what they've used to build their following. That's what they're using to continue to build their following, using to promote certain services or lifestyle. Is like, you can have this Ferrari if you trade the Forex markets, very directly like that. But most of all is the lack of value. If they're not willing to interact with the traders, the community, right, and provide some form of value, whether it's a podcast, whether it's videos, whether it's tweets, whether it's DMs, then what? That's always a red flag to me, because then why is there like a gate between the value? Why is there a gate between any value at all? Does that make sense? Like, yes, you can gatekeep some stuff, like the things you've worked hard on, your edge, your model, of course, like coaching, of course, you can charge for these things, but there must be enough value for that you have based on your success that you can provide a lot for free. You can provide so much for free in some form that people can then see your value. See, hey, this guy speaks very well. He's very good at teaching. He's very knowledgeable on this topic. Of course, receipts are always great, so showing withdrawals or showing payouts, showing obviously that you're getting funded, showing consistency most of all in your actions, in your character, and another one is very important, which is sticking to your word, right? So if let's say you're saying you're going to do a challenge, not a FX challenge, but like a prop firm challenge, but like I don't know, you're saying you're going to do workout for 30 days, that this person works out for 30 days, right? Or if they say they're going to do a free webinar every week, they do that free webinar every week, because I've seen it before. Like some guys who were at the top of the FX space at the time, they would never stick to their word. They would always sell a service and be like, yeah, as part of this service, I'm going to do, and they're the head of it, I'm going to do two webinars a week every week. They last for 1-2 weeks. They can't do it no more because they don't have the value. They don't have the passion for it. They don't enjoy it. So they're not going to stick to it, right? They just want to get the money in and that's it. Sell the service with these lies and then that's it. Sales, the biggest red flag you can ever have, the easiest one is if they have a sales team. If you need to have a call with them to be able to buy their product. That's always the biggest one because, don't get me wrong, if you have to have a call with someone, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, right? I'll say one thing because it depends what the call is about. If the call is, I've been trading for 2 years, and I don't really know the basics yet, and they turn around and say, okay, you should probably go learn those basics first before you join this course, that's absolutely fine. If, however, the call is that same scenario, but instead it's like, you know what, you haven't learned the basics yet, we're going to teach you everything you need to know, and this is the best course that you've ever seen, and you're going to be, we're going to hold your hand, we're going to give you everything that you need, just, there's $2,500, you send us $2,500 and we will get you started and we'll change your life. If the call is like that, obviously it'll probably be a bit more to that. But as a prime example, that's a red flag, So like, places like Learn to Trade, which is a huge thing here in the UK, and they do a lot of YouTube ads. Greg Zecker, they have a sales team. That would be a red flag to me, seeing videos of I'm teaching my gardener how to trade. That's a red flag to me, So yeah, okay, I'm trying to think if there's any more, but they would be the key ones that come to mind.
Yeah, it's interesting because the social media space around trading is different to social media space around a lot of other things, because in a lot of other spaces, for example, the thing that people are talking about generally aren't things that make them money already. So, for example, if you are if you have a social media page or YouTube channel about surfing, okay, you're not going to make a ton of money out of surfing. So, for example, they'll start a Patreon, they'll do whatever it is once they hit a few thousand subscribers, and that helps them keep going. But trading is not like that. You're supposed to already have made your money, right? You are talking about, I mean, there's different angles to look at it, because you've got the traders that are documenting their journey to profitability. So, I mean, we've got like, Hannah Forex, we've got Michael Bamba, we've got, I mean, they've obviously gotten to that point already. Also Kimmel as well. They were documenting their journey to profitability. And so obviously that's a different story, but a lot of people come straight on with, hey, I've made millions. This is my tips to make more. So it's interesting. And I think there is a lot of red flags that you can potentially look at when it comes to that. And I think when people place more of a priority on selling a lifestyle versus selling skills, or selling education to attain the lifestyle, it's a very different thing. I think people just literally sell the lifestyle. And I think that that's one of the main telltale signs. Segueing a little bit, in the social media space, I think there's a few people that really stick out as people that have taken the social media trading space by storm. I think one of them, and I think nobody can really overlook this, is Paladin. Paladin exploded onto the scene. And I'm curious to know your thoughts. Why is it that people have grabbed onto Paladin as such a strong force on YouTube, on Instagram? He grew like crazy. Why do you think people like Paladin have exploded? And obviously you work with him as part of your prop firm. How did that come about as well? I'd like to hear a bit more about that as well.
For sure. So like with Paladin, 100%. Paladin, attention to detail, having a strategy, with Paladin, he is who he says he is, right? He is his age. He has gone through what he's gone through. He is, a hard worker, someone who focuses on health. I can't tell you how many times, well, we haven't gone to that many meals, but every time we go to a meal, I'm like, yeah, order this, man. This is nice. Let's order. And he's like, that's not healthy. That's not healthy. That's not healthy. Right? So focused on health. Reading. Do you know how many times I've been around the guy and he's reading? Like literally, like there's like 4 other people there talking and he's just sat there reading, Wow. And so he is who he says he is. And he had a strategy of how he was going to do social media. And he puts a focus on quality, and storytelling. And that's very important. It's very important. And his story is incredible in terms of how old he is, in terms of how much he lost, and the hardship he had to go through in terms of getting to that successful stage, being homeless, losing so much, working jobs such as like Uber Eats, in New York City, which I can imagine is very, very difficult, especially in the winter as well, as he showed. And he has the documentation to prove it, to then turning it completely around and being one of the top prop firm traders who is managing 7 figures and done 6 figures in payouts, So it's because it's all documented, it's well documented in terms of its quality and timeline, and then it's real, because you can't, like with the prop firms, it's not like it's a prop firm he owns that he's done this with. It's all before that point, It's multiple prop firms as well. So it's not just one prop firm where you could then say, hey, maybe that he's working with that prop firm. No, it's all independent prop firms. And he is who he says he is in terms of he is consistent and he treats trading the way he says he treats trading, So he's genuine. And I think that's the big reason, because how many genuine people do we see in the space? Not many. And very similar example is Casper. Same thing. He's blown up. People are sleeping on Casper. The way Casper's going to be, I don't want to say it because people will probably get hate, but Casper will probably be the next ICT. The way his content is going and the impact it's having and the social media and his attention to detail, it'll be incredible, And I love to see it because, again, it makes me up my game when I look at Casper and the systems he has in place. Insane. In terms of the prop firm, though, that was an interesting one because the prop firm was never my idea. I was literally just looking at sponsors for the podcast, because we had finally gotten to a point where it was like, okay, maybe it makes sense to do this, because obviously, as you know, before that, I was putting all the money up myself in terms of renting the studios, paying for the editors, the flights and stuff for travel to do podcasts, you name it. And I probably spent about, I want to say maybe like 15,000 before I got any sponsor. And so I was looking for sponsors at the time. And who did I message? I think I just put it out. I think I said, looking for sponsors, maybe on a tweet or an Instagram or something like that. And then Omar messaged me and said, in a couple months, we're not yet, but in a couple months, we might be doing something, as in him and Paladin. And then I got a sponsor. I was sponsored for a 3-month period. Ended up just doing 2 months, but the 3-month period. And that's where I used to then say, okay, I'll do more podcasts and travel here and do this. And that's the whole point of being sponsored for the podcast and making an income from the podcast, is so I can invest it all back into the podcast, so I can travel and get bigger production and do bigger and better things. Because a lot of people might assume that, hey, you just have to have the equipment or just rent a studio and done. You can do that, but if you want to build something, it has to become an empire. It has to become its own business. So therefore, there will be its own cost associated and investment that's needed as well. But anyway, eventually Omar and Paladin had a call with me, and they let me know that, hey, we're looking to start a podcast. They saw what I was doing with the podcast space and how I was growing and the value I was providing. And they ended up just saying to me that they were interested in maybe just doing a freeway partnership with it altogether, because we had very similar values, very similar work ethics, very similar experiences. We've all used prop firms, we've all traders, and we're all crushing the social media space as well. And I'm very grateful to them, because they didn't have to do that. They could have just sponsored the pod. They could have just left me alone and done their own thing. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey. It was very by surprise. I feel for them, because they were working on it since January or February. And then I literally came in and when did I come in? End of April, early May. And then it launched in July. So they were waiting June, sorry. It launched in June. And they were waiting all this time while I just had to wait a month and a half. So for them, it was really daunting and long-winded. While for me, I literally joined at the last minute and was like, this is great. This is amazing. A month out, we go Miami, and, we got the prop launched and stuff. So it's been amazing, though. And I'll tell you one thing, though. It's a lot more work than people might think, prop firms. So much more work. There's so much more tedious stuff that goes into it. So there's so many layers to prop firms, when it comes to risk, when it comes to branding, when it comes to the changes that can be made. There's so many more layers to it, which is another beautiful thing. This is the thing that I think is so important about having multiple businesses, or pushing yourself and embracing challenges. That challenges are fun. It's a chance to grow. Because with the podcast, I'm still getting challenged with the podcast in terms of, I said about the devil's advocate thing earlier, for example. I'm still got things to grow on. But it's quite new to me now in terms of now it doesn't matter who the guest is. I won't get shaken up unless it's Denzel Washington or something. Then I'll be oh, this guy's incredible. I don't know, But otherwise, if it's just a big influencer in our space, I'm nice and relaxed now because I've done so many of them. So it's normal. So that challenge isn't there. While with the prop firm space, that's a new challenge, a whole new industry, a whole other business, same industry, but a whole different type of business model, different beast that needs to be tamed and needs to be learned and needs to be, to a point where I'm an expert in it, and we can all be experts in it. And again, it's a challenge as well to do what hasn't been done, which is hard to do in the prop firm space. It really is. It really is hard to do because it's so competitive. It's not. It's very different to courses, for example, where everyone has their own edge. And there'll be a different variation of that edge. Let's say prop firms isn't like that. You do something new, someone else will copy it the week after, and it's no problem. No one's gonna say anything because that's how that industry works. So then it's a real challenge to think, how can we do things differently? And we have some really amazing plans to do so. And I'm very excited to execute on them, because I don't think, even if people try to copy, they won't be able to do it the same. That's all I know. I know for a fact they will not be able to do it the same.
What is the future of prop firms in your mind? Do you think that they're going to, we all know that they're going to get regulated soon at some point. What do you think is going to happen with that?
I think those who are prepared for regulation will be fine. I think those who have the right legal teams, the right systems in place will be fine. and they'll just get regulated and then move on and continue as normal. But I think those who aren't prepared for that, don't have the right systems in place and infrastructure, they will probably close down. You know, they'll probably close down. And there are a lot of new ones. You know, a lot of new ones, and they're popping up every day. They really are. Like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, we joined the space in June, so it's not like we're that old. You know, but now there is literally, like, it feels like there's one literally every other day or one every day almost. And the funny thing is like, it's not an issue. The only issue is that you need to know who's behind it. You need to know you're in safe hands. That's the beauty of ours, is that even though we're relatively new, we've already jumped very close into the top 10 already, because we're known. People know who myself, Paladin, Omar are. They know who we are, our values, our ethics. They know that we're not going to just rug pull people. Like, we care more about our brands and our personal names and our legacy more than anything else. So we're never going to stain our legacy in that way. So that's why they trust us. That's why they put their faith in us. And they know that we're going to, in terms of, I hope they know anyway, I can imagine they will, is they know we're going to do things differently. They know we're going to do things in a unique manner and bring something that hasn't been done before as well. So yeah, in terms of regulation, like, we have the systems in place. We already have the infrastructure. You know, we have the legal team and the legal side there ready for when regulation comes in, to be probably already prepared, if anything, just to pivot and then continue. So we're already well prepared in that manner. But yeah, in terms of regulation, I think in terms of regulation, what it's going to take is that this is kind of where we might start to see it over maybe the next 12 months-ish. I can't say an actual timeline, but probably, because this is how it works, is when you get all these new ones, there's going to be a lot of bad apples in those new ones, because a lot of them have no face. A lot of them have no face behind it, no name. And that they're the ones that, if you put your money in them and they have no proof of payout, no team behind it, and that's it, they will close down. And all it takes is enough of them closing down and rug pulling people before regulators look at it and say, this is harmful to people, and therefore we need to step in. Right? The reason why we haven't seen regulation so far is we had obviously funding talent, but before that, not really many that had done that. So therefore, for the mass majority, it's a good experience. But they may lose on challenges and stuff like that. But other than that, that's normal. That's part of the game. But there hasn't been many like rug pulls. There haven't been many like scammers or people being deceitful, etc. It's more so just been maybe harder challenges or whatever. But that's it. That's fine, because if they've set the parameters beforehand, that's no problem. So that's probably why we haven't seen regulation so far. But it's because of the amount of people coming into the space now who are unknown that can change.
Right. It's interesting because prop firms seem to be changing every day. Like you said, new ones every day, but also prop firms themselves seem to be changing all the time. And I feel like everybody's trying to one-up everybody the whole time. I mean, there has to be a point where things start to get too competitive. I mean, there has to be a point where, there's only so much you can shave off, extra targets, extra, I mean, obviously trading times are now unlimited. Yeah. So, there's no extra days that they can give you, but they're constantly making targets less. What do you think is going to happen with, constant... I mean, obviously, competition is good because it creates a better environment for business. But I think there's going to come a point where it's just going to be too much. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think we're already at that point. Really, we are already at that point in terms of being very competitive. There are probably very few things that can be changed now, very few, and it's not a bad thing in that sense, because it makes it more competitive. Now we have FTMO, maximum trading days. We have my Forex funds, maximum trading days. Well, no maximum, should I say, so unlimited trading days. And that's an incredible thing, to see that the smaller guys, the smaller props, managed to shift that much of the industry that the big boys had to change. It really shows you that innovation is important and that innovation is necessary for a space to continue to grow. And that it's a great example of complacency, because they should have made that shift very quickly and then they wouldn't have lost as much of a market share as they probably did, right? But instead they were just too complacent and thought, everything's fine. Not to say that they're going to lose anything, because they're probably doing very, very well. But yeah, like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing in terms of people will get more creative, hopefully. Or the prop firms that will do well and survive will get more creative in how they can be different versus just okay, yeah, let's just change this challenge percentage to this, or let's change this minimum day to that, or maximum day to this, or news trading to, rather than that, you'll probably get more creative. And this is where the difference will come in. Not a lot of people have that creative mind. They're not innovators. They're copycats, right? So a lot of these people, new ones coming in, they're probably just copycats. They don't know about innovation. That's why they can't show their face. So this is where people like myself, Paladin, and Omar, we're innovators. We have visions. We know how to create ideas and know how to, more importantly, execute on them. We know where to find the teams. We know how to build those teams. We know how to implement things that people can't do, haven't done, and probably won't be able to replicate or copy. And even if they do, they won't be able to do it the same way. So that's where we thrive, because we know that at the end of the day, everyone can copy and change the same rules and all that. That's no problem. What can we do differently? What matters more? And what we're going to do in the next few months is going to be incredible. Starting with Dubai in October. Our main mission is to get around the community, right? Because that's the whole point. Like, the community is what built us in terms of the podcast, in terms of Paladin, in terms of Omar, our social presence. It's the community. So with our prop firm, it's for the community. We're not going to sit here and say this is the best prop firm with the most, craziest, trading conditions compared to everyone else. No, everything's very similar in that sense, right? And but we do have we have innovation coming for sure, which will no doubt get copied straight away anyway. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we're going to do something unique that no one else can do in terms of a challenge. We have a challenge in place that's coming very, very soon. I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but probably around a similar time. So it's probably good. But that challenge is very, very unique. But I guarantee you it will be copied within a week or 2 weeks. So I'm not going to sit here and put emphasis on we're the only ones. I'll say we'll be the first ones, and it will be amazing to see. But beyond that, we're going to do things that no one else will be able to replicate. Beyond that, we're going to get around actually with the traders, provide the traders a greater understanding of that network that we talked about earlier. Get them around people like Kyle, get them around people like Kimmel, like yourself, like me, like Paladin, get them around people like Umar Ashraf, multi-millionaire day trader, get them around these people because they can have access to our network. Get them around us doing challenges of all kinds of sorts. Like, there's a vlog going out today where we had our first payout, our first funded trader, I believe, maybe payout as well, but funded trader, who we flew to New York with Paladin and Omar, and they did like a one-on-one basketball challenge and Muay Thai, and having fun with them, breaking bread together. We had, I think about 20 or 30 traders down here in Nottingham, where we did paintballing, boxing, and a hit workout, from the SFT community, because we want to get around the community. And it's all good, well and good doing like a conference or doing like a thing where you just speak from a stage and walk off and try and avoid everyone, versus we're actually getting in the trenches. We're saying, I'm going to shoot paintballs at you. I'm going to box you in the ring. I'm going to, go do the hit workout with you. And then we're going to talk about our trading thereafter and sit down and have a meal together and network with each other and move around the room with each other. I'm going to introduce you to better traders. I'm going to introduce you to traders that you look up to so that you can speak to them yourself, And that's the thing that people won't be able to do.
Yeah, I think it's a whole new level of creating value, because, every prop firm has a Discord server. And I think that was, that started at some point, obviously, and they were like, oh, we got a Discord server, you can learn things. Some of them have education that they put out. And all of that is just about building rapport with, the people that are using the platform. And I think that you creating a whole new level on top of that brings it to a whole new level. I think that, firstly, people already know you, Paladin and Omar. They already know what you stand for, firstly, and that makes you extremely trustworthy. That makes you, firstly, you have a brand out there that you have to protect. So you can't you can't not pay somebody out. You can't, decide to, I'm just gonna breach this account. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And for people, that's already like they've got the social proof. But on top of that, spending time with traders using the platform brings it to a whole new level, and that's very admirable. And I think that that's going to be a whole new level that I think other prop firms are going to struggle to copy. They're going to struggle to replicate that element, because at the end of the day, people come to your prop firm because it's you. Mm-hmm. It's you. They're buying into you because they trust you. because they've seen you talk about your life story. They've seen you interact with people for however many years. Same with Paladin. I mean, like you said, Paladin's a storyteller. People know his life story. That's why they trust him. That's why they buy into his brand, because he's gone through this tough journey and people identify with that. I identify with it. And that's why I have so much admiration for him. And that's why if I was looking to hop on with a prop firm, I would go with somebody who is affiliated with a journey that I've been through myself, and somebody that is a huge public figure that has credibility. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. In terms of trading, okay, we haven't talked much about trading in this podcast. We've just spoken about essentially what I wanted to talk about. But in terms of trading, I think prop firms give you a massive advantage. For me, I was one of those traders that discovered prop firms, and it's what turned me into a profitable trader, because it switches your mindset to a whole different way of trading. It stops you from being a gambler in a lot of different respects. That being said, I mean, some people do find the opportunity for gambling in anything, right?
Yeah.
Some people are just natural gamblers. And I think that you can be a gambler with prop firms just as easy as you could be with a broker, just as easy as you could be with any other form of trading, or pretty much anything. And I think that trading with a prop firm, for me, pushed me onto the right path. Do you think that is generally what you see in a lot of traders, or do you think that it hinders them more than it helps them? I think for some it does, and most not, because it gets you into the frame of mind of trading like a real trader with percentages instead of just random risk management. So I think it's a big segue for a lot of people, and it was for me as well. And also the other element is having actual capital to trade with, because you can't, flipping your $100 a whole bunch of times is not something that's sustainable, right? Yeah, and I think that whole mindset switch, coupled with having to risk manage all of a sudden, has made people very successful in trading because of that. I wanted to know what you thought about that in terms of your journey as well. Did you find profitability before prop firms or after?
It was after. So I used prop firms for the profitability. I found it just before in terms of like on a smaller account, like a much smaller account, like a few thousand. I'd found profitability on that, but it was literally like maybe a couple months before I tried a prop firm. So then the prop firm allowed me to scale. So I was guessing maybe that was lucky. I don't know. But what I will say is it all comes down to the person, the trader, how they decide to frame it, how they decide to act on it. You know, because the gambling side is just, again, as you say, anyone can find gambling in anything. So like we see it all the time, the gamblers in prop firms. You know, the people who don't. I've seen people who they've never seen 10% before. So they've never seen the target amount that's necessary. And bear in mind, this is before we've had unlimited trading days come along. So they only had a month to do it, right? But they've never seen 10% made in a month, even on demo, even on paper trade, right? But yet they keep buying prop firm challenges. How does that make sense, right? How are you going to pass that? You've never done it before, so you're just hoping that you will randomly this time, now that you paid for something? It makes no sense. Yeah, and then the lower entry barrier for a prop firm to give you access to this 100K, which essentially is obviously 10K equity, but regardless, it's 100K in power in terms of the margin and leverage, etc. That messes with people's heads as well because of two things. One, it's so cheap, so they're like, oh my goodness, just £500. I would have thrown 5K into an account. So now I can buy 10 prop firm challenges and try it out, try and hope that I get a payout. So that gambling nature there. But again, what does it boil back down to? The person, the person deciding to think in that way versus the person who decides to look at the challenge rules and say, okay, once I meet this criteria confidently, I will then take the trades. Because now there's no excuses of the time limit now, right? Because now it's unlimited trading days pretty much across the board. So then now you have no excuse of, okay, I need to make 10% in 30 days. If the target is 10% and you have 3 months to do it, take the 3 months. Take the 4 months. Why do you need to do it in a month for? Oh, that's a long time. Okay, but Don't you want to trade for the next 20 years of your life, for example? Isn't that your goal, to trade for freedom and trade for the next 20 years, or even say 10 years? So what is 3 months in equivalent to 10 years, right? It's just people rushing. It's just people, essentially, this is the truth, right? It's just broke people trying to get rich overnight. It's broke people who are in debt, more than likely, trying to fix their situation, and they think that trading is the easy answer, or trading is the answer. Trading can be the answer, but you have to do it right. You have to do it right. You have to treat it with respect in terms of, okay, I'm not in a good financial situation right now. Let me focus on that financial situation, get that a bit better as I learn, as I develop my skill. So then once my financial situation is better and I can afford to lose money in the trading market, not meaning that you want to, but meaning that this £500, let's say, that I'm going to buy this challenge with, I can afford to lose because I've already sorted my financial situation out. Now I'm ready. And in that time, you built your skill set to actually pass this challenge. What's the likelihood of you passing now that you have your finances in order and your financial foundation sorted out, and you have the skill set, and you can actually lose that money and not feel it? Not that you want to lose that money, or that if you did lose it, you won't be like, oh, that sucks. Of course you will, but not like be absolutely the end of the world because you used a credit card to buy it, for example, or you used £500 out of maybe your £1,500 savings, meaning that you just took 1/3 of your life savings away. You know? That's the problem. The problem is people aren't putting focus on, okay, right now I'm £2,000 in debt, so £2,000 in debt or dollars or whatever it may be, and I want to be a trader. Okay, whilst I learn the skill set and take my time to do so, I'm going to get out of debt and start to build a cash buffer. The majority won't do that work. What they'll do is they'll say, I will flip a prop firm account, or I'll just pass a prop firm account and my payout will get me out of debt. Okay, cool. For the very minute number of people that will happen, minute, like literally very tiny percentage of people. The majority, however, that pressure of being in debt and not having the finances necessary outside of trading and not being able to afford to lose that prop firm challenge is only going to impact your psychology, and therefore mean that you're going to obviously lose that account, right? Because imagine your first trade on your prop firm account is a loss. What's going to happen? You're going to panic straight away, right? And then you're going to go straight off plan. Even if you, because I've seen people where they put in solid work for 3 months and back-to-back discipline with back-to-back results for 3 months. They start a prop firm challenge. They let the pressure of the challenge get to them straight away. And straight away, after 3 months of hard work and dedication, they go straight off plan. What does that show you? It shows that they didn't have, there's something unstable in their life, right, that allowed that challenge pressure to get to them, right? And they're probably, again, not thinking in the right way towards that challenge in the first place, of respecting it, you know, because it's not like the prop firms are tricking you. There are some that do, of course. Some do have a little hidden rules in the T's and C's at the end or whatever, but most of them don't, or at least not the top, you know, the top ones, where it tells you this is the percentage target, the percentage drawdown, here are the rules. So you know them ahead of time. So it's not the prop firm's fault, you know. You need to make sure that you do your due diligence and understand what you're walking into. And most of all, treat trading with respect, and more importantly, yourself with respect. Because at the end of the day, it's what I call self-harm. If you're just going to keep throwing money into accounts that you can't afford to lose and you're not sorting out your financial foundation. Now, it's easier to do when you are like a bachelor or just you're single and you don't really have much responsibilities and you're young. Not still stupid to do, in my opinion, but it's easier to do then, right? It's more understandable because you might be more naive and you might lack experience. But when you have responsibility and when you are older, there's no excuses for it. Because by now you should have the experience. By now you should be able to observe around you as well the people making very similar stupid mistakes and realize what that's doing to them and see the quality of their life. And you've chosen to become a trader so that you can improve the quality of your life and to have freedom, but yet you're not willing to make the sacrifices and do the right things to get that, you know?
I think it also comes down to your motivation and why you started, because I think a lot of people, like you say, they start to try and get out of debt, or they start to try and I want to make enough to go on holiday, or I want to just make some extra money on the side. And I think that a lot of people getting into it for those reasons won't make it, because that's not a sufficient motivation to carry you through the tribulations that come with becoming a trader. I think a lot of people want it, like I said, as like a side hustle. Trading's not a side hustle, especially when you're starting out. It needs to become something that you put pretty much all of you in, especially mentally. I think that people neglect that as can you teach me how to trade so I can make some extra money and I'll still keep working and blah, blah, blah. But that's the thing. When you start off your journey trading, you need to have a clear vision in your mind of what you want to achieve. And that has to be, I want to become a professional trader and I want to make this a long-term thing. You can't immediately say, hey, I want to flip this account a few times and go out and buy some nice clothes. That's not going to make it. Then you're essentially straight into the gambling mindset. And I think a lot of people neglect having the correct motivation before they start. And I can already tell before people even start who's going to potentially make it and those that will definitely not make it. And I think it's easy to tell because we've seen a lot of people at the beginning of their journeys. What would you suggest to people, practical steps to people starting in the industry? What would you suggest that they have in place before they start trading to make sure that they're set up for success?
Before they start trading, I would have a fixed routine in your day-to-day life. You know, so it doesn't have to be fixed in terms of it's exactly the same every single day, day in, day out, without fail, because life is life, and therefore there will always be challenges, you know, things can change. But generally speaking, 90% of the time when those challenges aren't there, should look the same. You should be sleeping at the same time, waking up at the same time, having some healthy habits, positive habits, and progressive habits that keeps you disciplined outside of trading. I think it's very important. It's been a huge thing in my life and a huge thing in my progression as a trader. And I think I've recognized it in the same traits in others as well. Financial foundation is the biggest point, I would say, because if you have a weak financial foundation, you will never be able to grow upon it. You'll never be able to build upon it. So financial foundation is so important. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be, you know, in an absolutely amazing financial position. Not at all. I wasn't, you know, and this is the funny thing. I was in debt when I got, you know, when I used prop firms and got payouts, right? But I had to have a really deep realization of understanding my certain situation in terms of where was I at, you know, where was I at? I was in this debt, you know, I couldn't afford really to lose money. I couldn't afford to put money into trading really. But I knew I had the skill set. I had done the skill set for years and years and years. I'd taken all the losses already. I had to let go of those losses as well. You know, I had to get rid of the baggage. So for someone who's, let's say, doing practical steps for someone starting out in trading, or someone who maybe been trading for a couple of years and had these losses, but let's say it's someone who's starting out, but they've had losses in other industries or had failures in other industries or pressures from outside people. So there's baggage. You can't bring that baggage with you. Trading won't allow you. Trading is a mirror, and it will literally reflect everything that is happening within into your results, right? So if you are bringing this baggage of negativity or past experiences, negative opinions from other people, you are going to always reflect that in your results, right? So you have to let go of that baggage because the past is the past, right? The past you can just learn from and that's it and move forward. There's no point worrying about the future either because the future is made up of what you do now. So all you have to focus on is being present and being consistent. The biggest thing I can tell anyone, not only traders, but anyone who wants to be successful, and this is guaranteed, and this is literally the only way to be successful, is to be consistent, right? It doesn't matter if you if you work hard, and it doesn't matter if you're talented, right? Consistency beats both of them, right? You can be a hard worker, but if you're not consistent, it leads nowhere. You can be talented, but if you're not consistent, that talent will be worthless as well, right? If you are consistent with your actions day in, day out, regardless of those challenges, and that kind of goes back to the habit that we were talking about and the routine, you will guarantee results. What those results look like and the timeline of those results, no one can say. But you do it long enough, you will be successful. Look at the podcast, same principle, right? When I started the podcast, I did not know if it would work. I did not know if it would be successful. All I knew is I was going to be consistent every single week and upload an episode, whatever that may be. Whatever that would look like, right? There was always going to be an episode, right? And we stayed consistent. And by doing so, one episode, all it took was one episode. The rest is history, right? Same with trading, right? You stayed consistent. You don't know when and you don't know how, but for you being consistent in your actions and turning up, doing your chart markups, doing your backtesting, doing your journaling, making sure you're turning up to your webinars and learning still and staying sharp and sticking to your edge, you will get the results, right? The results will be there. So guarantee success, just be consistent. That's it. Just be consistent. How many people do you know who come into trading and they not even just come in, but maybe even are still in trading for the last 2-3 years, and all they do is they're on it for 3 months, off it for 3 months, on it for 2 months, off it for a month. You know, where's that going to lead you? You might make tiny progress, if any, but tiny progress, but that is not going to lead you to where you want to get to. That tiny progress will never build enough momentum to get you to your freedom, get you to your financial freedom, get you to being able to invest into other businesses, get you to making the money in terms of talking about like being a money hack or a money glitch, you know? It'll never get you to that point in trading, ever. Tiny little increments. No, it needs to be consistent so that momentum can build and push you forward whenever that will take place. You know, it could take, some people it takes 6 months. Very minor amount of people, very small amount of people, some people might be 6 months. But they still, in that 6 months, had to be consistent and relentless, right? Some people might be 6 years. Some people might be 10 years, right? But who's willing to do it? All right? Who's willing to do it? That's the truth. Who's willing? It goes back to David Goggins. Who's willing to carry the boats, right? That's essentially what he's saying. Who's willing to do the hard shit, right? Most people aren't. But the ones who are, they always get results every single time. It's just a matter of when, right? And that's what people can't submit to. They just can't submit to this unknown. But it's always going to be unknown. You know, that's why. Do you know what happens? That's why they try and guarantee it with over leveraging. I'm going to guarantee my success by making 20 grand on this 100K account because I'm going to risk 5%, you know, or I'm going to overtrade. They're trying to guarantee their results because they know if they do it and it hits, you know, they'll get it. Even though afterwards they regret it. Even though afterwards they shame themselves. Even though afterwards they need to take a break. But if you submit to not knowing, but you know that you're doing the work, you'll get the results. I've seen it firsthand and I've seen it in everyone else who's done it as well.
Yeah, you can't treat trading at the end of the day like you can't treat trading like going to the gym going to the gym for a week every 3 months.
Yeah,
it's gonna do nothing.
Exactly.
You're gonna have no results at all.
It actually makes it worse.
By the time you come back.
Yeah. Every time you try and lose weight, it actually makes it worse. Because if you, what happens is, I think I learned this from my sister. She's a doctor. Basically, she said that fat cells don't disappear; they just shrink. So essentially, what happens is it's kind of like an elastic band. The more you stretch it, the stretchier it gets, right? So if you keep losing a bit of weight and then you put it back on, it's much easier for it to expand more, right? So it actually makes it worse, and it's probably the same with trading. You come into trading, you try for a short amount of time, and then you go and give up. It probably just makes it worse. More negative every single time. More baggage. So yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No. In terms of trading psychology as well, I think it's very important because every time you go in for that period that you're trading, you're picking up more baggage, like you said. Every time you've got a bad experience that made you stop trading, right? And you come back again, you're scarred from the last experience. You haven't worked through that and you're trying to do something else. And you're most likely trying to trade a different methodology, or you've jumped from one community to another community, one strategy to another strategy. And every time you're just doing worse and worse. So it's really interesting how that happens. And there's patterns like that occurs with pretty much all traders. I mean, I've been through it. I think everybody has. They've gone, the shiny object syndrome of jumping from one strategy to another strategy. They're looking for something crazy and magical that they can just put into place straight away and make money immediately. They're looking for the money printer, right? I think as well, one of the biggest challenges psychologically for me, and I think a lot of other people out there, and I want to hear your take on this, is dealing with people around you, loved ones, family, friends, when it comes to going on this journey, because it's not something that people understand, right? This is not a journey that has been undertaken for years, many decades, like other professions, like becoming a lawyer or becoming a doctor or becoming whatever it is a traditional form of career. Those, you go to university for 4 years and you work your ass off for 20 years to perhaps get somewhere in it. Whereas if you get into trading, you can work really hard for 4 or 5 years and suddenly you can be a millionaire. You can make a lot of money. And it's the same for a lot of different Wi-Fi money type of jobs. You get into social media marketing, you create an agency, you become a multi-millionaire, you become Iman Gadzi, for example. You could become whatever, I'm trying to think of other people, Sebastian Giorgio, all of them. You could become a huge name in a few years, and you could be 18 years old, you could be 19 years old. And this is not something that computes with family around us, especially parents and people from previous generations, because that's just not how it works, right? So how do you go around navigating, relationships with people when it comes to telling them, hey, this is what I'm doing? Or do you tell them how do you go around it, right? What was your approach, and how was your experience with it, and what would you have potentially changed about the way you approached it?
My approach was quite lucky. Like I dropped out of college after the first year, so I never went to university or anything. And my experience was that I just explained to my mother that I didn't have like a niche I wanted to go into. If I knew what I wanted to do, if I knew I wanted to do law or medicine or anything like that, then I would have done it. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I didn't want to just go for the sake of it, just so I can say I went. And I wasn't interested in it. So then I just basically sat down with my mom and I gave her a pitch, basically just saying that, look, I'm not interested in it. I don't want to waste my time there. I want to go into business. I want to go into entrepreneurship. And we made an agreement. I think it was like a year or 2 years, something like that I'll get to try. And then if not, then I'll go to university or something. Ended up doing longer than that, of course. And then obviously came across trading, and slowly things did piece together eventually, many years later though. So I was lucky in my experience. I didn't have that sort of anyone telling me no or giving me negativity in that sense. But I've heard obviously a lot of it from other people. All I would say is, and what would I do differently, even though I had the support, is putting a focus on being the right person. Don't try and convince people. Stop talking about your goals. Stop talking about what you're going to do and what you want to do. Just go do it, and people will see it. People will be able to see it. So especially for those people who are getting that negativity, or people, it's not even negativity, it's more so a lack of understanding, because they don't understand Wi-Fi money. They don't understand the skill set of trading or whatever it may be. So what they do understand is university and college. So that's what they know. So that's why they feel comfort in saying, hey, go there, versus this unknown, risky business, such as trading. So if you have that lack of understanding, the best thing you can do is just show them your work ethic, show them your drive, show them your consistency, until the point that they realize that this guy will do it. This guy will do anything, right? That's the most important thing. Because at the end of the day, you have to think about it like this. The most people who are getting this negativity or lack of understanding is people who are not consistent in what they do. They probably smoke weed a lot, or they probably play a lot of video games, or they don't go to the gym, or they don't do anything else, right? Or they complain all the time about their job, and yet they're trying to say to someone that, hey, I'm going to go into trading and be a millionaire, or I'm going to go into business and be a millionaire. How do those two things reflect each other? It makes no sense. This lazy person, lack of discipline, lack of relentlessness, lack of action person is going to turn around, go into this risky endeavor that takes a lot of work, and become a millionaire. Those two things do not reflect each other. So instead, you become that person, and you won't even have to convince them, right? You won't even have to explain it to them. And even if you do, they'll understand it and be like, yeah, he'll do it. He's got the work ethic for it. He's got the drive for it. He's relentless in what he does. He's disciplined. That makes sense, you see? So that's all I would say, is just be the person. Don't talk about it. No need to convince. Just be the person.
We're going pretty long now, so I'm gonna ask one last question, and then we'll wrap it up. But you said you had a segment where you did 60 different books, right? 60 different books, and that was the content that you created around it, and 30 of them were published. What were your top three? Difficult question, potentially.
No, it's a good book. It's a good question. My top three books, they weren't even trading related. One was, to be fair, and it was obviously Trading in the Zone. But if I was to give my three books in terms of my top three books, trading or non-trading, it would be Richest Man in Babylon. Richest Man in Babylon is just a very easy book to read, and it's about financial principles, very simple ones. So even like for the people we were talking about earlier about building that financial foundation, fantastic book to read for any age as well, young or even older, especially younger though, I'd say, because it's such an easy read and such a powerful one at that. So Richest Man in Babylon. Second one would be The Alchemist. It's probably one of my favorite books in terms of like the storytelling alongside the wisdom and lessons to be learned. And then the third one is Think and Grow Rich. and Outwitting the Devil, like Napoleon Hill books, essentially. But Think and Grow Rich was the first one I read. Outwitting the Devil is incredible as well, but both by Napoleon Hill. And yeah, those are my like top books. They're the ones. Essentially, what I do now is I don't really try and read new books. I just read those same books over and over again, just because they really hold that much value to me. All I will say though is, with reading, for me personally, is like you will resonate with certain books more than others. Maybe because of the writing style, maybe just because that book really resonates with you. And just treat books like gems, if you will, like keys. Like there's going to be like one page, one paragraph, one chapter, one line that makes a difference. You know, just collect them, collect the keys. Like there was one book I picked up and I didn't resonate with it. I just put it down after a few pages or a chapter. So it's like, I'm not going to waste my time going through it. I'll just move on to the next one that I do resonate with. And that's all I would say to people is like, treat books like that.
Right. And one last thing. In terms of personal development, was there anybody that really stuck out to you in terms of personal development content that you consumed? For example, you know, whoever it may be. Also in terms of trading. So it could be either. Is there anybody that you really sort of modeled yourself after in a lot of ways?
There isn't anyone in particular like that. There were like different speakers that I would love to listen to back in the day, such as like Eric Thomas, of course. You know, the classic. You know, you want to be as successful as bad as you want to breathe. Les Brown is a legend in the way that he speaks and speaks in terms of motivation as well. Les Brown, Eric Thomas. I really love like movie. I love movies. You know, I really love like especially the old school like Gladiators and Troy. Kingdom of Heaven, like I love those type of films as well for what they can do in terms of, even though they don't really do anything but in terms of the mindset of those individuals from those times and the way it like portrays them, very powerful. Like Marcus Aurelius quote, like what you do in this life echoes in eternity. It's, you know, incredible line that can really, just that one line can really shape the way you think. You know, really talks about legacy. Trading wise though, people like in trading, I have a mentor called Rit FX, very. He's not as well known, but he should be, I believe. But he really doesn't care about that stuff. But Rit, like really incredible trader, very big family man. Really modeled my trading around him in terms of like, again, like not being well known. Like people don't know me for my trading, right? They know me for the podcast. I like that, you know, and I model that around him because even though he does post his charts from time to time, he doesn't care about it. He's not like posting it saying, "Hey, come join me." Like most people won't even hear of him. Loads of people now will go and follow him off the back of this podcast, and he'll message me like, "Riz, where did you mention me?" Because I just got like 50 followers or 100 followers or whatever. And we laugh about it. But like for him, you know, being a family man and just being probably the first legitimate trader that I came across who, you know, didn't promote himself, didn't try and sell you a course, organically grown his following, organically grown the people who are in his community. So I really respect Rit and always will. Because even to this day, now I get like parenting advice from him and mentoring. That I ask him like, how do you handle 2 children, or how do you handle your trading around your kids? Like, you know, and he will still answer me, you know. So yeah, I really respect Rit. Johnny Godfrey is another one from the trading space. You know, really a professional, a true professional. It always has been. I watched his journey from way back in the beginning when he was just finding consistency or was profitable, like quite early on till now. Seen him obviously change trading styles as well. And done so publicly, which is not easy to do, and then smash that out as well. Always kept a very disciplined and edge-driven approach, and has traded, you know, personal 7-figure capital, maybe more, I don't know exactly, but definitely 7-figure minimum personal capital, which is not very much heard of in our industry, and is a very professional person, very supportive of the podcast as well, which is a great full circle moment, you know. And then Umar Ashraf, for example, as well. Obviously only got to connect this year, but seeing his journey, seeing again another person who has done multiple 7-figure profitable trading within the trading space, and just seeing how supportive he is to the smaller people. Well, what people would deem smaller people, but he treats everyone the same, being so supportive, giving great feedback, trying to give advice, and yeah, just, you know, doing what he's doing for the community as well. You know, these are probably people that I would say have been inspirations and big motivations and help across the journey. Yeah.
Awesome. Riz, thank you very much, brother. I really appreciate you dropping your words of wisdom on my podcast. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for being here, bro. I really appreciate it. So to everybody watching at home, thank you very much for watching. Please do make sure you subscribe if you got some value from this podcast, and let me know in the comments who you want to see in the next podcast. So till then, cheers everybody.